A journey that began on July 9th, 2021 has finally ended. That's right, last night I finished the final book, A Memory of Light, in the Wheel of Time series. Seriously, I mean, it's 15 books, right? I mean, if you count the prequel that was sort of released in the middle there, 15 books. I finished them all, and I'm ready to talk about it. Now, I want to approach this video from a couple of different angles, right? For those of you who have never read The Wheel of Time and are thinking about it, I'm going to give you some reasons why you might want to think about doing that. And completely spoiler free, some thoughts on the overall series, what I think of it, and all that kind of stuff, but from a spoiler free sort of take. But then there are some things that I want to talk about that are spoiler heavy, and I have some questions. I have some questions for those of you who have been reading the Wheel of Time all this time, and yeah, I have questions, a lot of questions. So yeah, let's just dig into it. Now, a friend of mine, Cody, that I worked with at my last job, he had been reading The Wheel of Time and was just like over the moon about it. He just kept talking about how good it was, and I was talking about different books I was reading. He's, man, you really need to read this. I'm like, okay, okay. And then when I heard that the series was coming out, and the more that I really started to dig into, like, I liked these large epic stories where you're spending a lot of time with the characters, lots of stories, all that kind of thing. That's what I wanted, and yeah, that's how I got into it. I mean, I've already read the Lord of the Rings. I mean, of course, I'm a Lord of the Rings fan. I read the Harry Potter series. I was wanting something just epic. That's really what I wanted, something epic. Now, I don't have any physical copies of the books yet. That may be coming down the road, but I did buy the entire series on Kindle. It was kind of in a bundle. I got a deal on it. So yeah, that's how I decided to read it. And then I also, from my local library, I was able to get the audiobooks, down, through the little app on my iPhone. And I got to say, for those of you who may have, I would say, attention deficit disorders, like apparently I do, reading along with the audiobook, it really helps me to retain the information, and I can read faster. So it's one of those things where I really just, I love the experience. And the whole reason I did that is because I had trouble getting into the Silmarillion, which is sort of the first book that was released after J.R.R. Tolkien died. It was sort of based on his notes and things. He wanted to release it, but they just never did. They released it then, and I gotta say, it's hard to get into. It's hard to get into it first, and it takes some perseverance to get through it, to understand it, because there's a lot thrown at you all at once. I found with the audiobook, I was able to retain stuff, and I was able to, just the fact that I could have things, pronounced for me was really, really helpful. And it, ever since, that's my preferred way to read now. Audiobook, read it alongside it. I love it. It's my favorite way to read. Now, I have read this entire series without getting onto, message boards or Reddit or anything like that. I was very, very weary of spoilers. I hate spoilers. I've had movies spoiled for me. I've had books spoiled for me. I just didn't want that to happen in something that I was going to devote so much time to. And luckily, I didn't get spoiled. But I almost did. Like I read something that spoiled, or what I thought was a spoiler for a character death in the movie, in the final book. I almost said the movie, in the final book of the series. And luckily that was wrong, because that didn't happen in the book. So I don't know what that was, but I will also say, just looking up a character, kind of a character background, right? One of the pictures spoiled a change to this character that I hadn't gotten to yet. So that was one of those things where, I mean, it wasn't a huge deal, but it was still one of those things where I'm like, okay, I got to be really careful here. Now let's talk about the actual reading, right? Everything. This was an epic journey. I mean, it seriously was. It was crazy. There was so much going on. Our good buddy Bucho, he read the first book and said, yeah, this is just like a Fellowship of the Ring clone. And in a way, he's right, because in that time when The Eye of the World was released, it was really, really difficult for these publishers to get people to read their books. And one of the things that they were trying to do is say, hey, try to be like Tolkien in a way. And Robert Jordan, he very quickly gets away from that and it becomes his own thing. And it's over the course of all of these books, it tells a story that's very, very different from Lord of the Rings and very, very good. And I think like most people, the first 6 books or so were really good. I really liked them. It kept me wanting to read. But there is what's called the slog. If I've heard this term many, many times when it comes to the Wheel of Time. These middle books, like books 7 through 10, around there is where people call it the slog. And they say, yeah, a lot of people don't like those books, and you have to just kind of persevere and get through it. And what's weird is, I don't know if it's because I was reading on Kindle and the audiobook, I'm not sure, but I really enjoyed them. I mean, for the most part, there were slow parts. Don't get me wrong. There are parts that are like, okay, will you just get to the freaking point, please? That kind of stuff. But for the most part, I enjoyed them pretty well. I mean, I had a good time through it. But I will say, yeah, there are definitely some slow parts. Now, again, as I mentioned, there's a prequel book called New Spring that was released, I believe, between books 10 and 11, and that's where I chose to read it. I chose to read it after book 10, and I'm actually glad that I didn't read it first, because this thing, the collection, it has it at the beginning. There's no way that I would have been able to know what the heck was going on without a lot of the context from the books that were published before it. I mean, it takes place like years before. But trust me, it was a good time, and I really, really enjoyed it. It was almost like a palate cleanser or something. I really, really enjoyed that one. Now with book 11 was like, okay, things are starting to come together, and we're getting toward the end. And then after book 11, Robert Jordan unfortunately passed away. So Brandon Sanderson came in to take over, and he was using a lot of Robert Jordan's notes, his wife's, who's also his editor, a lot of notes and all these things. And they basically said, look, let's finish this story with the notes that Robert Jordan had, but also Brandon, take the reins, go, take some risks and do the thing. And wow, there's definitely a writing style difference between the two, between Robert Jordan and then when Brandon Sanderson took over. I was actually worried that I wouldn't like Sanderson's style and that I would have preferred Jordan's style. Thankfully, that wasn't the case. Now, I'm not saying that one is better than the other. What I'm trying to say is I enjoyed the change of pace, because what Robert Jordan does is, in a lot of cases, he will tell a whole chapter on one character and focus on that one character through that whole chapter. Sanderson doesn't do that. He's cutting between characters, different situations. All of those things are happening all in one chapter, so it feels paced. It just, the pacing feels different, and it's, especially when you're getting toward the end, it started to really ramp up, and I really enjoyed that. If I do have a criticism though for Robert Jordan, is that sometimes you would go whole books without hearing about a certain character. So if you have a favorite that you like to read, you might go a whole book without reading about that character, and that's a bummer, And then, especially like I said in the slog, where there are some issues, I think one of the biggest complaints for me was that it seemed like it took forever for things to get going again. It's like there was a period of just stasis where not a whole lot changed. Like there's a character in trouble, and then that character just remains in trouble for a long time. And that's a bummer, but it needs to be said. It's all worth it in the end. The way that all of these stories interconnect and then they come together, the way that the characters, it's something that I didn't really realize, but going through all that made the characters who they were for what they had to be at the end. And that is like an amazing, it's amazing writing, but it's also, the planning is just, it's phenomenal, and most of that comes from Robert Jordan. I mean, of course, Sanderson did his part, and I think he has to be commended for that. But a lot of this comes from Jordan, and yeah, just what an amazing feat. I will say some tears were shed in this final book. I mean, there were definitely moments where it was just like, I mean, that was really, really satisfying stuff. And I just had a great time. I had a great time with it. And the thing that I want to make sure that it's clear is that even though this kind of starts off really resembling sort of the chosen one kind of trope, and there's a journey happening and all that stuff, and all these different characters and all that, the truth is it becomes something completely different, and each one of those characters does something pivotal to help save the world, and it's great. It's really, really satisfying. Again, everybody gets their chance to shine, and that's awesome. So yeah, I feel like I got my money's worth. This was an amazing series, and again, now I'm thinking, do I need to go ahead and purchase the physical books? I probably will end up doing that. But from here on out, we're going to be talking spoilers. So I'm going to talk to the people that have already read the books. But seriously, I want to know from you, if you decide to read it, let me know. You're not going to get any spoilers from me, but let's just be honest. There might be some spoilers in the comments. But for those of you who are ready to move on to the part where we talk spoilers, let's get into it. Okay, it's spoiler time. So let's talk about it. Who is your favorite character? For those of you who've read the books, hopefully there's nobody left, that haven't read the books yet, because I'm about to get into spoiler time, like really big time spoiler time. But who is your favorite character? I'll tell you who mine is. It's Matt. Like, Matt was every time it was a Matt chapter or a Matt sequence, it just put a smile on my face. That guy, I loved his banter. I really enjoyed it. And what I loved about it is that very roguish sort of character, but he's also really good at things. And that when he fought, it was like really impressive. And it was just like, he was constantly surprised at what he did. And it was just something really cool about that. I love the character. I seriously, I'm really curious to see what's going to happen in, because I haven't watched the second season of Wheel of Time, the show. The first season was, let's be honest, it's kind of meh. But I'm curious if I'm going to be able to watch it now with more of like a detached, okay, this is their own thing. Adaptations, that's just the way it goes. Adaptations end up being their own thing. So I don't know, but Matt's my guy. Now, for a long time, I thought it was going to be Perrin. I thought Perrin was going to be my favorite, but man, the slog kind of ruined Perrin for me. He was just, number one, nothing happened. And Fael is with the Shido, and he's just kind of biding his time and making plans and brooding. And it was hard to read. And it was hard to see this guy who kind of, finally stood up and said, I'm a leader, and I'm gonna lead you people to victory against the Trollocs and all that stuff. I mean, I don't understand it. I don't understand what the thinking was. It's probably my single, if I had to point at one thing that made me go, why? It's, why did you put Perrin on the sidelines like that for so long? That's a bummer. That's a bummer to me. And then even in the last book, it seemed like he was sidelined for almost all of the last battle. I mean, he definitely gets to do some cool things, and I like the Wolf Dream. I guess it's a wolf version of Teleron Riod, or Teleron Riod. I have trouble with saying that, but anyway, I enjoyed that. I enjoyed a lot of that. But then why do he doesn't really get a chance to, he gets sidelined, and that's kind of a bummer to me. Fael. I need to talk about Fael really quick, because there was a point in there when she's messing with Perrin early in the series, and she's kind of giving him the cold shoulder and all this stuff. I was like, I want her to die. I seriously want her to die. She ended up being kind of cool, though. I actually ended up liking her and enjoying, I guess, her journey. But then in the last book, she ends up being sort of like, always in trouble, and I don't know. It was kind of strange how there were like some tropes that were happening with some characters, and they I guess Jordan was trying to get them out of that trope, but then in the final books, I guess it's just because of, hey, this is the end. A lot of them kind of reverted back to being in trouble and having to be saved, and that's kind of a bummer. But Fail was a pretty big change for me because, like I said, I wanted her to die. Nynaeve was another big change. 'Cause for me, Nynaeve was probably, and I wouldn't say that I didn't like her, but she was annoying. And it was just like, why are you so brash all the time? Why are you, whatever. She got annoying. But man, her character really grows throughout the series, and she became one of my favorites. I would say she's probably my second favorite, just behind Mat. I mean, Mat's just too good for me. I mean, I'm sorry, but I love a rogue. What can I say? But yeah, Nynaeve was awesome, and especially, with all of the changes that she went through and all the trouble she went through. I was smacking my head a little bit when she was kind of yelling at the other sisters for making her go through that crazy trial in the trial, I guess, to become full Aes Sedai. I was a little agitated at her. I was like, come on, just can you just play by the rules for like 5 minutes and then you can go off and do your thing? Why you gotta do this? But she's still an amazing character, and her growth through the series was great. And I really, man, when Moraine comes back, and under that tent, Rand's trying to make his thing, and Egwene's like, we can't do this or whatever. Moraine comes back, and Nynaeve just goes up and hugs her, and it's just like, man, that's awesome. Because I mean, they butted heads right throughout the whole series, and Nynaeve was like, I hate her, she's terrible, and all this stuff. I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed the growth of that character, and yeah, like I said, one of my favorites. Rand went up and down for me. Rand became very brooding as well, and I really enjoyed, at the end of book 12 and then at the beginning of 13, when he's back. You know what I mean? The Rand the person, not the Dragon Reborn, but Rand the person is back, and he's basically wearing these new clothes, but he's still himself. I really enjoyed that. When Rand goes to Tuon, and Mat's kind of trying to, like, broker the deal in a way. The way that Rand reacts to Mat and their little back and forth, it was like, man, it felt really comfortable, Of course, there wasn't this whole scene where Rand, Mat, and Perrin kind of sit and just kind of reminisce and joke around and, be themselves. But it was nice to have that Rand and Mat scene, and then of course there's a Rand and Perrin scene a little later that's pretty fun too. But yeah, Rand was, like I said, he was interesting, and I really enjoyed the idea that Jordan didn't want him. He didn't want him to die. But in order for him to survive, he had to be out of his own skin. And so the fact that this, well, it's basically a sleight of hand in a way. This idea that he trades bodies with Moradin at the end, so that he can go off and basically live his life. Pretty cool. Even though I will say, I'm still, every now and then I would get a little like, it's kind of creepy that you got 3 wives. It's, I don't know if does that bother anybody else? It seemed very male fantasy to me. And again, I don't have a problem with fantasy in general, but the idea that, oh yeah, he gets like the 3 most desirable women in the story, and they share him, and they're all cool with it. And I'm like, that's one of those things where it's like, yeah, but they're cool with it, And I'm like, yeah, but they wrote it that way. Jordan wrote it that way. It's still a little, it's still a little weird to me, but I liked it. I still like Rand, and I really like the idea that there's still some power there, even though, Ta'Veren is done, the battle's done. but he still has some power. I think that's really interesting, and to end it that way is pretty cool. Egwene and Gawain. A lot of people didn't seem to really like Gawain like at all. And I didn't really understand that. I didn't really have a problem with him. I was kind of indifferent to him, but in a in a weird way, there's definitely moments with all the characters, I think, where they'll do something and you're just kind of like, oh man, why are you doing that? Why are you doing that? There were moments like that, of course, but yeah, I ended up liking Gawain, and I wasn't like super affected when he died fighting Demon Dread. That is his name, right? Demon Dread, Diamond Dread, however you say his name. The Forsaken guy at the end in the last battle. It was still pretty cool. And then Egwene, I always liked Egwene. I was fine with Egwene, but man, with her trials in the tower, and I'm talking about when she gets captured by, well, by the tower, this rebel group, and she gets captured and has to go through all of these, this almost torture every day, and the way that she stood up to everything, I I loved that, and that character progression was really really cool. And then when things started to turn around and she really started to stand up for herself, it was it was just like, yeah, that was awesome. I think book 12 will probably go down as one of my favorites. I really enjoyed that. And then of course, let's talk about Varen for a little bit. Oh my god, I did not, I didn't see it coming. And I know there's probably a lot of people that are like, what? You didn't see that coming? No, I didn't. I didn't see it coming. That she was a Black Aja. And that whole scene when she's sitting there and she's about to die and she's kind of laying it all out. And then Egwene starts to go through it all. And it's just like, that was awesome. That you basically hid that from me for so long. I love it. I think it's so good. I'm sure that on a reread I would see clues, but I did not see that coming, and I really really loved that. And of course, Egwene. Let's go back to Egwene. With her eventual departure from the series, I thought that was awesome. I thought that was awesome. Now I've heard some people say that, since Nynaeve was the most powerful, that they should have switched. They should have been switched. Nynaeve should have been the one to defeat Mahel and basically heal that area, and then Egwene should have been the one with Moraine. I don't know about that. I don't know about that. I enjoyed the way that Egwene went out. I was a little bummed out that Nynaeve and Moraine were kind of sidelined with Rand in that last book in a lot of ways, because they're just kind of sitting there waiting for Rand to finish having this dream party with the Dark One. That is a thing. That is a thing. And I mean, yeah, it's just, I don't know how else you would do it, and I enjoyed it, but I kind of wish that both of them would have had more to do too. But anyway, about Egwene, I ended up really liking her, and had no problem with her. So there you go. Now let's talk about the Trakand family a little bit, and surrounding, like, the Morgase story was really interesting. That was one of those situations where I was like, can we resolve this? Can you just find Elaine, please, or Gawain, or Galad, and say, hey, I'm alive? Because all of these decisions, and these thoughts of, oh, Rand's the bad guy because he killed her, and then no, he didn't kill her, and all that kind of stuff. The Morgase stuff was one of those things that I'm glad that it got resolved the way it did. I thought it was pretty cool the way it did, but I was ready for that to happen a lot sooner. But Elaine was one of those that a lot of people don't like her. I never had a problem with her. I thought Elaine was pretty awesome. Now, entire chapters about her dress and things like that, I get it. I get it that that's boring, and her impetuousness, this idea, oh, well, my babies are going to be fine, so I can just do whatever the heck I want because I'm basically bulletproof. That was kind of annoying, especially when she got people killed. But that's just the way things happen. I mean, I say that like I've lived in that world before, but you get what I'm saying. It's it's not a character flaw. It's literally the way the character is. So I didn't have a problem with that. And I will say also that Brigitte was one of my favorite characters from the beginning. And she was one of those that I really wanted to have a satisfying arc. And I got to say, I said that tears flowed a little bit. When Brigitte died in the last battle, I was floored, and I'm like, I cannot believe that happened, and I cannot believe Elaine's gonna go out this way. Oh my god! And then it turns around, and the horn is blown, and Brigitte is there, and I was just like, yeah, that hit me. I really really enjoyed that whole sequence. Now Aviendha and Min, Min I feel like got the least amount of things to do in the whole series as far as somebody that could be considered a main character. Min just didn't seem to have a whole lot to do. And then Aviendha seemed really, really important. And then she just went away for a while, and she just wasn't there. She wasn't talked about. And it was just really strange how I wish that it was a little more even with the characters as far as coverage, because I think Aviendha was a really cool character, and I just don't think that they really did enough with her. The whole idea of of her turning that on Grendel at the end, the compulsion and all that, I thought that was pretty cool. But yeah, I thought Aviendha was great. I just wish there was a little more. And Min, I just didn't get a whole lot from that character. I don't know. Am I wrong? She had some great scenes and some really fun scenes, especially with Matt. But yeah, I was kind of on Min. Now Moiraine and Lan. Okay, Moiraine is awesome, and I mean I think pretty much everybody loves Moiraine, right? I mean, there's not a whole lot of people that don't like Moiraine, but I was just, I really liked her character, and I really liked the choices that she made. And then when she goes out, and that's in book 5, right? I don't remember the names of the books, but I think I remember a lot of the numbers. It's weird like that, but I think she gets taken away in book 5, and I'm sitting there the whole time going, I bet you she's coming back. And you don't know how tempted I was to look it up. And I finally said, no, I'm not going to look it up to see if she comes back. I'm just going to trust the story. And man, it took a long time for her to come back. Like they mentioned it, I think book 11. And then she doesn't come back until the end of book 13. And then she doesn't get a whole lot to do in book 14 other than basically bridge the peace between everybody. And it's one of those weird things where I was like, I feel like she could have done more. I mean, I don't know. I kind of wish that she'd made her return earlier, I guess. But that was a great scene though. Matt and Tom and Noel, or was it Jane Farstrider? Is that his name? I think I might get, but that whole scene was awesome, and the return of Moiraine. And then that's another scene that got me, by the way, just kind of offhand, that got the tears in my eyes, is Noel showing up at the last battle with Oliver. It almost felt like a cheap shot, but man, I really enjoyed that. And Lan's one of those characters that you immediately go, okay, that's like the coolest character, right? And he, talk about getting sidelined. I mean, he doesn't get anything to do in a very, very long, very long time. And he really got to show some cool stuff at the end there. The Demon Dread, I mean, that line, what is it? I didn't come here to win. I came here. Is that what he says? I didn't come here to win. I came here to kill you. Or something like that. But it was awesome. It was great. That whole sequence was great. Yeah. Lan goes down as one of the coolest characters like ever. Like ever. Logain was one of those where I kept wondering when he was going to turn. And then it ended up being Taim that turned. But then I thought, okay, since you did that, I expected Logain to have more of an impact on the last battle. And really the only big thing that he gets to do is break the seals and save some people, which is it's fine. It's fine, but it was still kind of, it felt kind of there, you know? It didn't have an impact that much on me. But there you go. Now Swan and Liana. I wanted more from it is Liana, right? I could be wrong. I think it's spelled Liane, but I think they pronounce it Liana in the audiobook. Anyway, Swan is was awesome. Again, another one of my favorite characters. I love it when a character says what's on her mind and or their mind, I guess. She was great, and the way that she went out was a talk about a gut punch. I did not see that coming. I had a feeling that it would come up, but not like immediately. Like, hey, if Min says, hey, if you and Garth Bryn are separated, one or both of you could die. And she's like, we got time. We figured that out, I think. But hey, this is more important. And then she's dead. It's like, oh, okay. Holy crap. But Liana was one of those that I thought she was going to have a bigger part. And she gets sidelined for most of everything after, I mean, she's there and she's doing stuff and then she just doesn't do anything anymore. And it's like, that was kind of a bummer because I liked her character. I thought she was kind of interesting. Now, a lot of people talk about Tuon and they don't like Tuon. I am one of those that I don't like Tuon. I don't like her. I mean, I don't know. She's basically okay with slavery, and that's not right. And so her pigheadedness is not interesting and cool or anything. And the fact that Matt likes her so much is weird to me. But then again, Matt's also weird. So it's kind of like, okay, I guess I can kind of see that. But yeah, Tuon was definitely not one of my favorite characters. Now, Lanfear, this whole idea, I watched this thing with Brandon Sanderson. It was like a 10-year anniversary of A Memory of Light. And he's talking about that Lanfear is still alive after having her neck broken by Perrin. What? Like, can someone explain this to me more? I mean, and they seem to be referencing something that I don't know anything about. So, do you know what they're talking about? I never liked Lanfear. So it was kind of like, yay, she's dead. And then now she's not? What? So if you know anything about that, please let me know. Did anybody else think that Podden Fane was sort of a waste? I didn't understand why that character kept coming up. Like, even the end, while the end was cool, with Matt and all that stuff, and that was neat. Something about disease and, once you've had a disease, it can't hurt you again or something like that. I enjoyed that, but I was still like, why does he keep coming up? He doesn't seem to be that influential or important. So it was kind of strange that he would pop up and do one thing, say a thing, and then he'd be gone for a while. And he didn't seem to be that important. I mean, he was apparently going to be the vessel for the Dark One when he came back, but I don't understand. I don't understand it. Now, Andral and Pavara, I really liked this thing, and the way that they were presented, it kind of made me think, did I miss something? Were they introduced a long time ago? No, I didn't realize that this was like completely new. Brandon Sanderson, they were his characters, and I really enjoyed that. And the way that this dual bond happened, I thought that was really cool, and it made for some interesting storytelling. The way that Sanderson wrote them talking to each other, and being able to communicate, without talking. I just enjoyed that, and I thought it was cool. But apparently they're kind of controversial, and I guess it's because, you could have been spending time on one of the other characters, and I kind of get that. But also, like I said, I kind of enjoyed it. So, what do you think? Okay, now additions, right? There's, of course, the big hardbacks, the old hardbacks with the Daryl K. Sweet illustrations. There's the paperbacks, but does anybody own the trades, or are there any other really cool editions of the series that I should look at? I'm kind of interested in buying them, even though, as you can see, I barely have any room in this room. There's just not a whole lot of room in here. But I kind of want to own them because they're awesome, and it's become a series that's really important to me, you know. But yeah, leave your thoughts on that down below too. As I mentioned, I watched that stream where Brandon Sanderson talks about sort of his process about A Memory of Light and some secrets that were, you know, announced and all that kind of stuff. Is there anything like that that I should watch? You know, for those of you who are big fans of Wheel of Time, are there any other things that I should be looking at? Should I get the companion? Should I, you know, just let me know. I'm interested in learning more about it and eventually doing a reread. I mean, not immediately, but yeah, eventually doing a reread. Now, I have read Joe Abercrombie's First Law trilogy. I've read Gentlemen Bastards. I'm reading The Dark Tower. I'm in the process of reading The Dark Tower now. Of course, I've read Harry Potter, Lord of the Rings. What else do you recommend? I mean, for those of you who loved Wheel of Time, what other series, you know, kind of hit you and scratch that itch? I'm kind of interested what everybody says, what everybody comes up with, because I'm looking to add stuff to the old reading list. Now, I will also say that the Cosmere is definitely on my radar, so you don't have to say, you know, Brandon Sanderson anything, because I'm pretty much going to read those at some point. But yeah, let me know. This was really an amazing experience reading Wheel of Time over these couple of years, which I didn't realize it took me that long, but I was reading books in between, by the way. Anyway, yeah, I'm curious. If any thoughts that you may have that maybe something I didn't cover or whatever. I'm interested. I mean, I'm not a booktuber, you know, this is not my usual sort of video, but yeah, I'm interested in what you have to say about the Wheel of Time. So leave those comments down below. We'll talk about it. So thank you all so much for watching. We'll see you on the next one.